What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing a full video on making a beat with the SP404sx and Ableton. I'm going to record the samples into my 404sx and use the killer effects that are built into this to get that grit and lo-fi sound that we all love about the 404sx. Then what I'm going to do is take those samples off the SD card, get those into Ableton and use Ableton to arrange the beat. Now this workflow is just really cool because, like I mentioned, you get the sound of the SP404sx, but then you get the amazing arrangement capabilities of Ableton. So it really is a win-win combo, mixing hardware with software. So if you want to stick around and watch my process, this is what this video is going to be all about. Let's get into this one straight away. Right, so here we are at the SP404sx. I've got nothing in here at the moment. I'm going to use bank A, which is completely empty. And the approach which I'm going to use for this is to just sample a full bit of the sample. So I'm not actually going to be getting the chops on the SP404sx. I'm just going to sample in a large portion of the sample, and then what I'm going to do with that is resample it over a number of pads and apply some key effects to it. So let's go ahead and start recording something in. Now, because of copyright, I'm going to have to be pretty careful about what I can and can't include in this part of the video. So I won't be including full bits of the sample. I'll just give you a little flavour of what I'm sampling in. And then when it gets to the actual chopping up of the sample, that's when I can start showing you exactly what it sounds like. But I'm going to go for something jazzy. As you all know by now, I like making jazzy hip-hop beats. And they always seem to have quite a high success rate when you pick a jazz sample. So that's a lot of the reason I use jazz samples in these videos, is because I want to make sure it works. I don't reverse engineer my videos. I'm making this beat right now. So we want to choose something that's going to work. And what I'm going to start by doing is putting on some MFX 16. I'm going to turn the right hand dial all the way to full. So that's fluctuation. I believe the left hand dial, which is range. This can actually ruin a sample, so you do have to be careful with how you use it. If you use this all the way to the left, it can kind of just destroy the sample. So I tend to go around sort of 3 o'clock. Between 12 and 3 o'clock is kind of a good range. It just takes the edge off a little bit. And I'm not going to put any of the noise on, just because I can do that in Ableton later. So I don't want to ruin the sample by having noise stuck on it and then I have to use it. So we'll leave that off. So basically I'm just getting the flutter. Okay, so I've got a good chunk of the song in there now. It's sampled in, and that sample had MFX 16 on it on the way into the machine. So we've already got this with that effect already on it. We don't have to go and resample that for the first time. We recorded the sample in with that effect on it. So the next thing I'm going to do is probably add a few more effects, obviously. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some radio tuning, which is 17. So this can sound a little bit noisy when the default settings come on, but you can get this to sound quite sweet if you play around with the effects and their parameters. Kind of adds a little bit of a kind of bit crunch sound to it. Okay, that sounds quite nice. It's a bit noisy, but that'll be okay when the actual sample's playing. So I'm going to record, resample, I'm going to make sure that's in stereo, and I'm going to record that onto the new pad. Okay, that's now resampled onto pad 2. I've got the MFX 16 and radio tuning, and I think the final thing that I want to do is add a bit of compression, because most of the other things that I want to do to this sample I'll be able to do inside Ableton, like EQ. That's probably the main thing that I'm going to do after this, is I'll be doing some EQ inside Ableton. So I'm going to put one final effect on, a bit of compression, which is just going to try and pull everything together, and we're going to set quite a low sustain. The attack's going to be quick as well. I want it to be in and out pretty quick. I don't want it to be adding a huge boomy vibe to the sample. I just want to try and crunch it and make everything sound kind of uniform. So we'll experiment with this a little bit anyway. Let's see what this sounds like. And yeah, that's just kind of adding quite a nice thick vibe to the samples. So we're going to go ahead and add that, and then that'll be it for the sample side of things on this one. Then we can move on to the drums. I'm actually just looking at the waveform of the recording that I've done there, and that has really balanced things out in terms of levels. So that's a really solid waveform that I've gotten for that sample now, so that's a good thing. Okay, next then we're going to record some drums, and I'm going to use auto trigger level for recording these because it just makes it so much easier. You don't have to trim the start. So it's function 4. I'm going to set the sensitivity to 3. I'm going to press record on that, so that's going to be ready. And then we'll record some drums in, so let's get a kick first. And for this one, I'm going to be using my LOFI Drums Volume 2 pack, just because there's quite a lot to choose from in that one. So I'm going to go ahead and find a kick in here. Okay, I quite like this one. It's got a kind of, it's got a bit of clipping on it, which I quite like. It just kind of peaks a little bit and it has that nice distortion. So I'm going to go ahead and record this one in. So you can see here it says ready when you press record, and then as soon as it hears a sound, it's going to record it onto pad 9. And there we go, there's nothing at the start which we need to trim off, so it's super handy for drum sounds. So let's go ahead and get a snare. Now for the snare I'm going to use MFX 16 just because it gives it this really nice crack, because you can use the range and yeah, you can basically just get a really nice crack on the snare. So we'll turn the flutter down, we'll turn the noise down, and we'll just see what effect we can get with this. Okay, this is quite a nice sound. So this is snare 16 in my pack. Okay, that's not cracking as much as I thought it was going to. Okay, this 20 actually could work. It's got kind of a shaker sort of vibe to it. And we'll get that recorded in. This is without the effects, and this is with it. So let's go ahead and record that in. I accidentally did that twice, but we'll have to trim that then. Okay, so that's that one done. It's got a bit of MFX 16 on it, so far we've got the kick, the snare, and this is sounding a little bit feeble, so let's see if we can do something with the isolator. Okay, I've used a bit of compression there to bring up the volume. Now, that snare may not work, so I might have to end up subbing that out for something else when I'm inside Ableton, but for now, that will do. And then we'll just get a quick hi-hat in here as well. And that sounds fine. Let's record that one in. This is hi-hat 3 from the pack. And because of the volume of this, auto trig level isn't picking this up, so I'm going to turn it off for this one. And let's go ahead and record that one in. So yeah, there we go, that's all done. I'm not too convinced on that snare sound, but we may have to swap that out when we go into Ableton. But for now, I'm pretty happy with how those sound. And what I'm going to do now is get all these sounds off the SD card on my computer, and then we'll get to the arrangement side of this this beat. So we've got the sample, which has got the numerous effects on it. And then we've got the drum sounds as well. We've got the kick, the snare, and the hi-hat. So let's see how those work out, and let's start putting things together in Ableton. Okay guys, so I've put the SD card into my laptop, and what I've done is I've browsed to that drive, so that you should be able to do that relatively easily. You'll see the SD card on your PC or your laptop or whatever you're using, and it'll say SP404sx. Clicked into that, and as you can see here, there's a collection of folders. I'm going to go into Roland, and then you need to go into SP404sx, and then you need to go into SMPL, which is sample or samples. And these are the only recordings that I've got on my SP. Everything else, every other bank, every other pad, there was nothing on it. It was completely blank. So these sounds are the ones that I have recorded onto the SP, and these were the ones that I was making the beat with before. So we know that we started on A1, pad A1, and we resampled twice. So this will be the sample, and 9, 10, and 11 will be the drum sounds. I'm not sure what A6 is, but we'll just ignore that for now. We don't need it. I've got a little folder on my computer ready to go called Video Beat, because I'm making this beat for the video. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy these across. So selected them all, Command C, Command V. And I'm going to rename these now as well. So we know this is sample. That's hi-hat. That's the kick. So this must be the snare. Okay, so they're all labeled. And I've got Ableton open here. Now, I've got a default project that loads up loads of different things for me. So I've got a drum rack, I've got a simpler to chop the sample, there's a compressor and RC20 if we need that, a hip hop sub if we want to do that, and an audio track just because I usually use this for recording my videos, so that's just the track that's set up, but we are actually going to use this track as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag all of these sounds into that track. And as you can see here, they're all quite low volume. So I'm going to normalize these, and to do that, you'd hit Command J or Control J, highlight the clip, Command J, double click it, and you can see here this value changes. If you hit 0 and then enter, that will normalize the sample for you. So I'm going to do that for all of these. Okay, they're all normalized, and what I'm going to do now is move these to the places where I want them. So the kick, the hi-hat and the snare, I want these on the drum rack. So I double click the drum rack so that I can see this view, and I click once and drag it into this particular place. So I always have mine kick, snare, hi-hat exactly the same as I have it on the SP actually. So I'm just going to drag those on, and now I can delete those. And for the sample, I want to go to chop sample. That's the track which I've named that chop sample. It's just a track with a simpler on it, and I'm going to click once and drag that into here. And this has gone to slice mode, and I'm going to set that to manual because I want to manually choose my slices. And I'm just going to check the start. Okay, so there's a bit of dead noise there. We'll sort that out later actually. So there's some dead space there which we'll need to figure out, but let's go into the drums and listen to these. Okay, so I'm going to now put a drum loop down using a clip, and the way I'm going to do that is hit tab to go to the clip view or session view, I think this is called. Double click in here, and I'm going to start drawing out a drum loop. So let's get the hats in first. And one thing to note is make sure everything is off this track, otherwise it will start playing, or you can mute it and keep it for later. I might just mute that and keep that for later, so that's just hidden now in there. So these hats should be in. And I need to set a better tempo, so I'm going to set this to 82, let's say, for this one. Okay, that's a nice tempo. So I'm going to humanize these hi-hats a little bit because they're all the same volume at the moment. So I'm holding Command on my Mac, and you can see this little symbol comes up, and then you can drag up or down to change the velocity. And I'm just going to do this on the alternate ones just to add a human element. Now, I don't want them all to be the same, so I'll vary it a little bit. Okay, that second one's a bit quiet. Okay, that sounds a lot better. That sounds a lot more humanized. And then let's get snares in. Perfect. And some kicks. This is just temporary for now, but I'm gonna do something like this. And here I'm just having to change the velocity because it basically remembers the last velocity that you chose, and it started applying it to the other hits that I'd put in, so I needed to change those back to full volume. Okay, nice. Now let's go back to the drum rack because I just want to check that these are all cut properly, and you can already see here that they're not at all. So there's a massive gap before the hi-hat. The snare's got a huge gap before it as well, and the kick. That actually looks okay, but it's got a huge tail that we don't need. So let's go ahead and crop these. Just crop that down like this, and then right click, crop sample, snare. Let's find the start point of this. Zoom right in. Crop sample, and we don't need that tail either. Can actually get rid of a bit of that noise. So I'm going to turn snap off and add a little fade out on that maybe. Okay, I like that. So crop sample. And the hi-hat, that's way off, so let's get that butted up to the start of this here so there's no sort of air or space before it. And again, let's get that tail right down. We don't need all that tail. Let's turn snap off. That sounds pretty nice, so let's crop that. Okay, so the treatment on the drums for now is done, and the loop should sound a little bit tighter now as well. Cool, that sounds better. Right, this doesn't sound very humanized at all. It's all exactly on the grid. So I'm going to move these around a little bit and get a bit more feel into this beat. So I'll move the snares to make them a bit early, and I'm going to move all the hi-hats. I want all those to be off the grid because I don't want it to sound computerized, I want it to sound humanized. So I'm going to move all these a little bit, just randomly really, before and after the beat. We don't want anything on the grid really, because if that was an actual drummer drumming, they're not going to be exactly on the beat every single time. So okay, that's got much more swing in it now. Maybe we can add a little bit more swing by making these hi-hats a little bit later. Let's see how this sounds. Cool, I'm digging that, that sounds nice. Okay, so let's move on to the sample, and I'm gonna have to cut this again because obviously there's gonna be copyright issues. Unless maybe if I transpose it right down. Maybe, okay, I'll transpose it and hopefully we'll get away with it. If not, I'll have to edit it in post. So, chop sample, we're gonna arm this track now. And let's start playing this. And I mentioned about that start point we're going to have to edit, so let's move that along. Okay, we want a chop point there. And you'll notice that the start points of these might not be absolutely perfect, but what I'm going to do is do a bit more treatment later, so I might add fades to the start to hide the little bit of noise that you get in. I can hear a little bit of noise at the start of those samples, but we'll be able to figure that out later, so that's not a concern for now. Let's just get the chops roughly where we want them. Okay, so we've got all the chops we want. I can transpose that back up a little bit, although I probably will end up transposing it down. I usually do it with all my samples just because it makes them sound a lot nicer. So there were some really, really nice chops in there. Let's have a quick listen. Really like that one. Okay, so there is a little bit of noise at the start of all those samples like I mentioned before, so let's use this fade in to get rid of those and experiment with this. This one's a bit off. That's a lot better. I really like this last chop as well. That little kind of roll into it is really nice, a roll into the note. Okay, so those chops are sounding good. So what I'm going to do now is going to start getting that drum loop going, and what I'm going to do is start jamming some chops over the top and see what sort of vibe we can get going. So let's get this drum loop going. Okay, so that first one that I chose, I really like that as the starting note. I actually really like that progression, so I'm going to go ahead and record this in. So basically the way I do it is I just hit record on chopped sample here, and I just start recording those notes in straight away. I don't even do a counting or anything, so you'll see what I mean now. So let's go on to this, and I'm going to go do a little counting in my head basically, and then just hit record, and I'll just record those in straight away. Okay, so that's one idea I've got in there straight away, and I really like it. So I'm going in here, and what I'm going to do is actually right click on these and quantize them. I'm going to use fold so I can see these a little bit easier. Fold basically just shows you only the notes that you've actually played rather than the whole scale. These are overlapping a bit. Maybe I'll leave that just to make sure that there's a smooth sound. Crop that down so it's the right length, and we can have a little listen to this now. Okay, that sounds really nice. It's in time, it's got a really nice vibe to it, but we can't just have that for the beat. We need to have a kind of ending to that section. So we need that 3 times, and then we need an ending, I think. So let's see what else we can come up with. And I quite like that. Okay, so you could see there, you can just keep this running and you can just jam ideas. And now that I've got that one that I like, it's this at the end, these 3, I can just literally move these start and end points, crop the sample, or crop the clip, sorry, and we'll do the quantize on that again. And this should be good to go now as well. Let's just stop that overlap there because we don't really need the overlaps we've found from the first recording. And we'll get that onto 3 as well. We'll crop that down. And let's listen to that. Okay, so they're the 2 ideas. So let's do 1 and then 2 at the end of the loop. So it's going to be 1 3 times and then 2 once. And that will then go back to the start again. Really, really happy with that. I like the sound of it. It's got that 404 flavour about it because of the treatment that we've already done on the samples. And now what I'll do is just include a couple of variations on the drums. So what you can just do is hold down Option on your Mac, and I think that will be Alt on the PC, and drag the clip down. Now we've got a copy, and I'm just going to do one where there's a pause at the start, so there's nothing until the first snare hits on the bar, or on the loop, should I say. So remove those, and because this snare's early, that's not going to sound right coming in on an early note with the chop. So I'm going to move that in this particular clip to be exactly quantized on the grid, and that'll make it sound a lot cleaner when it's coming in. I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to do one without the snares, and you can just go as mad as you want with this stuff. It really is up to you how many parts you want. I think that's going to be enough for me to make a 1 to 1 minute 15 beat, so I'm happy with that. And I can just keep alternating and jamming around those when I make the final beat. The hip-hop sub, should I do some hip-hop sub? Yes, so this is a built-in Ableton sub, and I'll try and add some sub to this beat. It's not my strength, I hate adding bass to stuff, I really need to get better at it, to be honest. So let's give it a go actually and see if we can get anything decent going here as well. Okay, so these other tracks are really loud, I can't really hear the bass that much, so I'm going to bring these down a bit. Okay, that's kind of a note that I like sitting under this sample and drum loop, so I'm going to go ahead and record that one. Okay, so that sounds pretty nice. That's sitting in a mix actually okay by my standards, which is pretty poor on the bass side of things. So I'm happy with that sub. It's only one note. It's just adding that low end just to fill out the beat a little bit, which is nice. And yeah, we've got basically everything that we want there now. I'm just going to add another track and I'm going to put some noise on because the noise is going to help fill out the beat as well. I probably could have done this on the SP and generated some sound, but it doesn't really matter. I've got loads of noise sounds that I can use here. So I think this is actually a noise pack which I've started creating for you guys. So we'll drop that in here. And we want this looping around all the time. So what we need to do to be able to loop it is warp it first. As you can see here, you can't loop it without it being warped first. I'm going to hit warp and then I'm going to do loop. And we're going to have that playing all the time as well. So let's start off something here. Okay, and let's see what that sounds like. Okay, sounding nice. On the master, I've got an EQ8 here, and I'm just going to roll off the highs just to add to that lo-fi vibe, and just to sort of warm the sound of the beat up a little bit. And I'm going to add a bit of compression. We'll see how this sounds. So I'll bring the threshold down. I'll turn the ratio up. I'll bring the attack down, and the release, I want it to be quite quick with the way it works. On the drum rack, I've got an EQ8 as well already. I think I am going to take off some of the highs on that as well, just to mellow things out a little bit. As you can see, there's a drum bus as well. That's a built-in Ableton thing. So if you want to go ahead and add that, that's completely up to you. And it's up to you how you colour your drums, how you want them to sound. You can add boom, you can add drive, crunch, you can do compression, you can do all sorts of things with drum bus. It can really change the sound of your drums. So it's definitely worth looking at that as it's built in with Ableton. I've got a saturator on it as well. That's just adding a little bit of saturation. It's nothing too heavy. But yeah, let's see what that sounds like now. Soloed. And you can see here, you can really change the colour of your drums with the EQ8. Okay, I quite like that. And let's hear the sample on its own as well. And I might just throw an EQ8 on here. Now, I'll do this quite a lot. What I'll do is I'll throw an EQ8 on and I'll just take out some of the low end just to reduce the sort of muddiness of the sample. Now, I know lo-fi is kind of about that side of things, but yeah, I kind of like to have quite a clean mix. So let's have a look at what that'll sound like. It might not sound good for this beat, so I might end up taking it off. But let's just see what this sounds like with some of the lows taken out. Because obviously we have got the hip hop sub in there, so that's going to be doing the stuff in the low end. So we don't really want too much interference from the sample as well. So that's some of the low end taken out. And let's see what that sounds like as a whole. Okay, that sounded nice. I think the only thing left to do now is the mixing, so I'm going to mix this down a little bit. The sample's a little bit too loud. I want those drums to be kicking through the mix, kicking and popping through the mix. So I'm going to bring the sample down a little bit, and probably because of that I'm going to have to bring the hip-hop sub down a little bit. So let's just see what that sounds like. Okay, I think we're pretty much done there. I really like the vibe of that. I'll probably add some little Foleys in, some little rapper noises if I'm going to actually go ahead and release this beat and finish it. And obviously with the different clips that I've made as well, I'm going to have to arrange those to make the full beat. I'm not going to include that in this video because this video is getting super long now. But yeah, you can imagine what I'm going to do. I'm just going to find bits where I want the snares to drop out, where I want the kicks to drop out, etc, etc. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the final beat in the video right now. Okay, so that was the final beat. There were a few changes that I made after I was showing you what I was doing in Ableton. I did some more EQ on the snare. It wasn't snapping through the mix how I liked it, so what I actually did is cut off a lot of the low end and the mids just to get that high end sort of snap through the mix, and I think that really did make a difference. Obviously you'll hear as well that I padded out the beat a bit with some extra noises and voice samples. I think that really added to the overall sound of the beat. But yeah, let me know if you enjoyed the vibes. If there's anything you think I could have done better, or if there's something that you particularly liked, then I'd love to hear your comments below. And this has been a very long video, so if you made it this far, here's a killer little tip for you. Always EQ your drums. Now, I never used to EQ my drums, and I used to struggle getting drums to fit in my mix, but you can shape and color drums so well with EQ that it really is a hidden weapon, really. So even if you're on the SP, it's quite primitive, but you've still got those EQ options, so make sure you use them to your advantage to get those drums to sit in your mix. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Like I mentioned, my lo-fi drum packs are available from spvids.com. They're instant download after you've purchased them and are super easy to do, so go over to spvids.com and check those out. The purchase of those keeps me doing what I'm doing, so it's really appreciated. Keep making beats, and I'll be back with more content very soon. Peace!